finding genuine connection on the autism spectrum. So we know that it's a myth that autistic people are not social, or that we don't want friends or don't need friends. But what does finding genuine friendship look like in everyday life? Hi everyone, Paul Mikulev here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So you've probably come across the myth that autistic people like to be alone, don't like friends, don't like socializing, and if you've spent any time within the autistic community, you'll know that that's not the case. However, that myth didn't come from nowhere. It's legitimately significantly harder to connect with other people when you have certain differences that are potentially getting in the way of the way most people typically connect. So I find personally that if I'm trying to make friends, for example, it's a lot easier to make friends if we have common interests. It's a lot easier to make friends if we like doing the same things or like hanging around in the same places or the same kind of situations. So when I don't like going to pubs because they're too loud, or when I don't like mainstream culture, or when I have a shorter, smaller, lesser tolerance for small talk than others, then all of a sudden there are a couple of extra barriers there to finding genuine connection. There are a couple of things that we can look for in terms of making those connections. The first one is time. You may have heard the saying that the best thing you can give an autistic person is time. And that comes from the fact that if someone knows you a little bit already, then that's already slowly starting to break down some of the barriers to being a little bit different. So the way that human ostracism works is that when we see or hear or feel or notice something that's a bit different, the first reaction is, oh, I'm not sure I want to be associated with that. Someone's walking down the street shouting and swearing. That feels weird because it's outside the box. Now, maybe that person has had a bad day, maybe that person has Tourette's or something like that, or there could be a perfectly good reason why I could even be friends with that person. But the first reaction is something is different, and our human reaction is to think, oh, that's a bit weird, I want to stay away from that. So I give that impression to people sometimes unconsciously without knowing it. And then they pull back a little bit from the relationship, just a little bit, enough for it to make it harder to form that connection. So the more time that I've spent with someone, the more time someone spends getting to know me, figuring out, oh, when he takes a minute to respond, he's just thinking. When he doesn't really like to talk, maybe it's because his brain hasn't turned on in the morning yet and he'll talk to me more later. And the more different sides of me that people see, the easier it is for me to be authentic and show my current how I feel to that person without risking too much having that ostracism reaction where I'm doing something weird and therefore the other person sort of withdraws a little bit. So in every stage of life, this is quite different. In my stage of life, most of my kids have friends. Most of my friends have kids. I do not have kids. So that means that it's harder to interact with my peers because we're not likely to do the same things. The kind of free time that you have when you have kids is quite different to the kind of free time and activities and stuff you can do without kids. In a similar way, when you have a reason to do things, so if I go and drop my kids off at school every day, I'm going to meet other people who also go and drop their kids off at school every day. And we have something in common in life, and then that is a bit of a bridge to say, well, hey, after we drop the kids off at school, do you want to grab a coffee or something like that? It's a lot easier to find ways to intermesh our lives if we already have something that is quite common. Unfortunately, I keep going with the positive and then the negative. So we're looking for things that I like to do with other people, and for grounding things where we're currently doing the same thing, like we both drop our kids off at school. But at the same time, I need to find ways that actually suit me, because if I go to places that are too noisy, for example, I'm going to have a time limit on how long I can be there before my energy drains and I have to go home and recharge for a bit. So what I'm looking for is the opportunity to talk, me personally, to talk to one or two people in a relatively quiet environment for a reasonable length of time, in a way that allows for the conversation to open up a bit and for us to get around this, past the small talk, so that I can actually share a little bit of my real self with people. So sometimes that happens with common interests, but sometimes that is just a genuine heart-to-heart, person-to-person, how are you going? Really, how are you going? What is going on in your life? What's exciting? What is disturbing or depressing or demotivating? You know, when we start to be able to share the highs and the lows of life, then for me at least, that is where I find that connection. I know that other people aren't necessarily quite as reliant on that deep level of connection, and really enjoy just spending time around people without even talking sometimes, or doing an activity like a board game, or like other things where you're interacting, you're chatting with someone, but you're not actually going too deep emotionally. There are some pros and cons of meeting new people versus sticking with friends you already know. For example, if I meet someone new, the chances of us striking a conversation about something we've never talked about before is actually pretty high, because this is one of the reasons I really love to do couch surfing, because when you say hello to someone, you don't need a reason or an excuse to say hello. The reason you're saying hello, I'd like to get to know you, I'd like to talk to you, is I haven't met you yet. That's kind of the whole premise of the whole concept of couch surfing and meeting other people from around the world. Is we are a community of people who are curious about other people, especially from other cultures. So meeting new people, you can very often find something interesting to connect for a short time with, and it doesn't matter if you don't like the other person in terms of a personality, and it doesn't matter if you don't really have other things in your life that are more grounding for a long-term friendship, because you're just having a nice little interaction. The downside of new people, though, is that it depends on the situation. You might have to go through quite a lot of small talk to get the other person feeling comfortable enough to find a topic that you like, that you're both interested in, to share the true side of yourself that you're actually interested to share. Old friends, though, can have the opposite problem. We've already had all the conversations about this and this and this and this, and this is all we ever do. And sometimes if I only have my friend that I talk to about Pokemon and that's it, sometimes it can be hard to break out of that and talk about something else. And in that sense, it becomes a bit compartmentalized, because I don't share how I feel in this aspect of life, because when I'm with this person, we have plenty in common, plenty to talk about with the thing that we've already agreed that we both like talking about. The advantage, though, is that because they know me already, I can have a lot more time to explore, where do I want this friendship to go? Which other parts of my life would I like to share? Maybe I try and share about my family and we still only talk about Pokemon. Okay, well, that didn't work that time. Do I want to try next time? Maybe there's something else I want to try. We've got the benefit of time, and the benefit that an old friend will give me the benefit of the doubt, and I know that I'm not about to just suddenly lose them forever because I accidentally say the wrong thing. Our relationship has gone through enough that I know that everything's going to be okay. So when I am looking for ways to find genuine connection, it really depends what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding an activity and finding other people who are interested in that activity. I'm really into bouldering at the moment. One, because I can do it by myself, but two, it means that I can meet other people while I'm there. I can go with a small group. I can invite friends one-on-one, and it's something to do, something to talk about. So finding an activity that suits you and then finding other people who also suit that activity is one way around the neurotypical problem of how do I make friends when I don't like the same thing most people like? Well, there will be other people drawn to the same things as you're drawn to. So that's one way. Alternatively, if what I'm really after is an opportunity to connect one-on-one with someone, then I don't want to schedule too much activity. What I want is more like a coffee meetup or some kind of board game meetup where you actually end up talking to one or two people and then we can do something afterwards. I went to a bouldering meetup the other day and afterwards I checked in with a couple of people. Hey, do you want to go and get a drink after this? And then with a smaller group, we went and spent some time together. So that kind of thing is all just opportunities. And with the numbers game, with opportunities, eventually I'm going to find someone I actually connect with. And then it's just a matter of making sure that I give myself the permission to ask for what I actually want. So most of the close friends that I have, we tend to meet one-on-one because that's the only real way that we can have the time and the space and the lack of interruption that we can really connect with each other. If we were to only ever meet as a group, then that would be lacking for me personally. So anyway, I've shared some of the things that I like to do to attempt to find genuine connection and some of the barriers. I'm curious to hear how you like to connect. Do you enjoy the one-on-one, the getting really deep and meaningful with someone in a conversation? Or do you prefer to stay at a surface level and have fun with a group potentially? So I'm curious to hear what works for you and things that you've tried. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you again next week.